Your statement today focused a lot on collaboration and consensus, and while collaboration is emphasised, how will the Welsh Government address potential conflicts of interest between stakeholders in the sector? You and I have talked about this grand coalition of bringing people together, but how is that going to translate into concrete actions that will actually feed into the decision-making process? And how do you intend to actually bring those people together? Because they are talking from completely poles opposite views of what they expect government policy to look like. You also mentioned throughout the statement about effectiveness and measurement. You highlighted progress in certain areas like the peatland restoration projects, but how is success of those initiatives and others like the Nature Network programme going to be measured in the long term, because they are having vast amounts of public money invested into them? So I think it's vitally important for us as the Senate here that we actually know how you're going to measure that and what the outcomes of those projects are going to be. You quite rightly mentioned the sustainable farming scheme and farming in general and all the controversy around that at the moment. And I know you're due to make a broader statement on World Farming Week, which is next week on the 14th around this. You did emphasise in that statement that you want a successful Welsh farming industry, and that's what I want, that's what you want, and I'm sure everybody around this chamber wants that to happen. But that can only happen when you collaborate with farmers and actually work with them. Because at the minute, farmers feel like government are doing things to them and actually not encouraging them to change. So I think something from you, Cabinet Secretary, I think the round tables, which you've mentioned as well in a previous statement, is going to be welcome. But all these initiatives have to have some teeth and they have to have measurable outcomes coming out of them, that they're not just talking shops, which the government set up. Bovine TB, which you talked about. What I'd like to know is what progress has the government made on that about allowing in-calf cows to stay alive on farm if they've been diagnosed with TB? Because I think that's a really important point that we need to address and flesh out, because I don't think anybody here wants to see in-calf cows being shot on farms and then cows drowning in their mothers. I don't think that's something we want to see. It's not something the industry likes to see. So I think that's something that the government need to update us on. You talked about fisheries and aquaculture, and I'm interested to know how the Welsh Government will address potential challenges related to climate change in this sector and its impact on the fishing stocks across Welsh waters, because everybody wants to see a thriving fishing industry here in Wales, but environmental challenges are making that more and more difficult. But you've also got plans which you outlined. If you can elaborate on those plans to see how stakeholders from the fishing industry are involved in that and how you're monitoring progress and adapting the fisheries management plans to all the changes that are happening across that sector. Yeah, you've moved on to something which I've talked to you quite a lot recently about the workplace recycling regulations. No one can deny that businesses across Wales want to recycle. Everybody wants to do that. I enjoy recycling. I want to make sure that everybody recycles. But it has to be done in a way which supports business. And these regulations are rolled out too quickly, without the consultation of the industry. I know you'll probably say in response this has been a 25-year conversation, but I've talked to waste operators across Wales who don't know what to do. You've got companies out there, pubs, hospitality, who do not have the bins yet to actually comply with these regulations. So I think it'd be interesting to know what more work you're doing around that, because I don't think it's actually where it needs to be to enable business to do the recycling they need to do. You talked about river quality, and I said that again is a huge issue facing a lot of people, especially my constituents. I must get about 40, 50 emails a day in my inbox about the River Wye and the River Usk, and I'm sure regional members who cover my part of the world get those as well. So I want to know about the River Quality Summit, and how is that actually going to address some of the problems that we've had? Because we've had summit after summit after summit, but nothing seems to be happening, Minister. We've talked about sums of money which are going to go in to help them, but I'm not actually seeing what that is delivering on the ground. So it'd be very interesting to hear from you. What are your plans for how this can be adapted? How can we actually improve river quality here in Wales? So this summit actually has some teeth to it and actually shows how we can improve river quality in Wales. And on the MVZs and the agricultural pollution regulations, how are you actually measuring those, and how are we actually making sure that it is actually improving water quality across Wales? Because very good putting these things in, but if it's not making a difference, how are government going to adapt and change these things to make sure it actually is working? On animal welfare, the statement highlighted that animal welfare is a win-win for both animals and humans. I'm an animal lover myself. I've got dogs and all sorts of pets and everything I've had over the years, so you won't find no greater animal lover than me. But what I'm interested in, can you elaborate on any specific initiatives or policies that are planned by the Welsh Government to further improve animal welfare standards in Wales beyond the existing measures that are currently in place. And finally, moving on, because I'm testing the Deputy Presiding Officer's patience, finally, with regards to net zero targets, you're setting these new sets of plans coming forward, but can you just explain how these are going to differ from previous strategies that the government has had? Because I believe that the only way that you can deliver on a net zero and climate change commitments is working in collaboration with others. That's a collaboration with land managers, a collaboration with farmers and the industry to bring everybody together to deliver what government want. Because if you're splitting everybody apart, nobody is pulling to get together in the right direction. So I'll be very interested to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer.
I might have missed one or two, but I'm sure James will tell me. I wrote quite a few down there. I will be very succinct. James, first of all, thank you very much for the welcome to this post. It's an exciting portfolio, a lot of challenges, but genuinely it makes me smile getting up in the morning. It's a great portfolio covering everything we do here. One of the themes that you raised in your issues was how do you manage stakeholder differences of opinion? Well, you actually meet with them and you discuss with them and you go with the evidence, and then you recognise that there will be times, James, when there will still be a different point right at the end of those discussions where we then have to make a decision, but that's what I'm here for. But what my commitment is, and it's even though we have a statement coming forward next week on specifically on farming, I've already announced with that there will be a ministerial-led roundtable where things can be escalated up for those hard decisions. But I think it's a lot of genuine listening, engaging, looking at the evidence, and that includes all the areas of the portfolio. You mentioned polar opposite views. I'm not convinced that there are. That's one signal point. We actually have an immense amount of agreement. We can't keep painting people into corners of different views. Actually, the commonality of what we agree on is the important thing. Then it's working out how do we work around those areas where there are disagreement in different areas. Let me just touch on the peat restoration. Publicly available, some very good work already on the successes of the peat restoration project, and we are motoring on that in Wales. We are putting a lot of money into it, but it's delivering success. And I would strongly suggest to James and to anybody, if you haven't had a chance, go out and visit them. I've been out in the last couple of weeks to 2 of those. I'm planning to go to more. It's an immense success, and it creates jobs, as I mentioned in my opening statement. You mentioned TB and on-farm slaughter. The TAG group, which I met with when they had their first meeting a couple of weeks ago, very shortly into my portfolio, one of the first things they're looking at is indeed on-farm slaughter. Haven't seen the feedback yet from that. That expert-led panel will escalate it up to the partnership board, and inevitably it'll come to me as well. But I'm looking forward to that. Also looking forward, James, to where else they go with looking at in the round on issues on TB. On climate change and fisheries, you mentioned just very briefly. We've already produced the proposals around bass and king scallop. We have a different type of fisheries in Wales than we do around the rest of the UK. I say that as a former UK fisheries minister. It's quite different, but there's some real opportunities. So bass and king scallop, we've already produced the plan. Shortly coming forward are those on whelks, cockles, crabs and lobsters and so on there. And again, I was glad to meet those involved in fisheries in Swansea and West Wales in the last couple of weeks. Workplace recycling, well, the argument there is actually it's 10 years in fruition. We've already done it on domestic recycling. Workplace recycling was the next logical one. We put in place an immense amount of support, advice, best practice. And yes, there will be some glitches in it, but you know, once again, what Wales is doing is, not for the sake of it, but we are saying, if we are serious about tackling litter, and also we're serious about zero carbon, this is what we do. We go ahead when we're ready. We go that little bit further and faster, but we work with people to support them. And finally, crikey, you covered a lot of ground. River Quality Summits, the next one is in July. I will be chairing it, looking forward to it. And the nature of those River Quality Summits is you do actually bring everybody together to say, how can you all raise your game and reach what we want to do, which is having pristine rivers, and that's the approach we shall take. Net zero, we've said, this is the decade of delivery. Get into where we need to be by 2025, by 2030. Those are big steps. And that does mean we have to push on. We cannot walk back from it in any sector whatsoever. Dipro Llywydd, you're looking really... Yeah, you've covered aspects of animal welfare as well, simply to say. We launched a 12-week consultation on licensing of animal welfare establishment. This falls alongside our idea of developing a national model to improve the regulation of animal welfare. The consultation closed on the 1st of March. We had over 11,000 responses, but I'm looking forward to bringing forward some news on that, on the back of that, when we've analysed it. And I think I may have missed something, but there was a heck of a lot you covered, James. I'll pick it up with you again if there is.